After the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, the fandom was split into two, Silly Billies and Based. This began the beginning of the era called the Meme War. Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of the Font I'm using to write this video script, was released the year before 2002 for the PlayStation 2 and was created by Hideo Kojima 2, director of the cult classic Metal Gear 2. Hideo Kojima is a man who loves people who know how to say words, and with the raw, unmatched power of the PlayStation 1 and 2 discs, he birthed Metal Gear Solid from his impreg womb and brought an entire generation of children, but especially man-children, to the thought-provoking realities of Nuke's bad, psychological turmoil as a soldier sucks, science is a cruel horror, genetics exist and determine who you are, and finally, why life is worth living despite all the clear bullshit involved. Kojima's masterful tactic of story writing was to blend absurdity with reality, as most Japan-bred weebs tend to do. Kojima loves big giant robots and cool sword-wielding men. He's also a perv, however, he weaves these elements in with real-world catastrophes brought on by war and science, such as Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and some other things, but especially those two. This merging of fantasy and reality, as well as your personal experience of the game, provides a unique blend of storytelling only truly feasible through the medium of video game. MGS was a Merrill's pixelated massive success and left fans clamoring for more testosterone-fueled, radiation-inhaling, and psychologically challenging tales, starring the weakest test tube baby. And so, not but a year later, Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty was announced. And fellas, golly gee whiz, were those demos and trailers glorious. Solid Serpent was back, on a boat of all things, and come the game's release, it was just as players envisioned. For about 2 seconds. It seemed Hideo Kojima wanted to partake in the act of a little trolling upon the fandom. And one snake is metaphorically, but definitely, literally, killed off. The game is reintroduced in a new location 2 years later, with a new protagonist. The androgynous femme-male wife of my dreams, Raiden. Fans were a little angry, a little aroused, and a little confused by this change from Muscular McGee to Fickle Femboy? I cannot for the life of me do a Raiden impression. However, this video has no interest in bad opinions, so let us proceed to discuss a game rich with real-world commentary that lasts an indefinite amount of time, extensions of themes from the first game, good swimming, and evil bisexuals. I'm Ryan Wolf, and this is Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, De-Cyphered. Metal Gear Solid 2 is a very natural extension, an improvement upon the mechanics introduced in the first game. It maintains key components while feeling drastically different. It isn't simply the same game, especially with its movement mechanics. You can still run, crawl, sidle, shoot in top-down, and look around in first person, but 2 allows you to walk, roll, shoot from hiding and in first person, peek corners, stand up on your tippy toes, and most importantly, faceplant like a dumbass. Movement has been enhanced, not changed per se. However, these additional elements grant players far more options, making use of techniques and concepts already learned from the first game. On top of this, first person especially is granted a far greater use. It naturally flows between 2 perspectives and makes the game, assisted by the graphical improvement, more believable. Detail is the key to the game's immersion, and this is especially true in the tanker with all its environmental interactions. wet footprints alerting guards akin to the snow of Metal Gear Solid 1, flyer bags imploding upon the impact of a bullet, pipes bursting, guards reflecting upon their own futile mortality when held at gunpoint. Search teams meticulously cover rooms as you too contemplate your mortality, and a newfound option of pacifism upon all these enemies, which all have their own names, predating The Last of Us 2 by about 18 years, with none of the pretentiousness involved. Can you believe it? It can be argued that these new mechanics, first-person shooting especially, break the game apart. They certainly did for the Metal Gear Solid 1 remake. However, their purpose extends far beyond simple additions to mechanics, and into the realm of simulation and believability. Immersion is the function of these. One has to consider how these details, bursting pipes for example, spraying a guard awake, will truly help them. The fact of the matter is, they seldom do, but aren't they just, like, neat, memorable, realistic? The art style improving, maybe just a little bit from the first game, also goes a long way in enhancing immersion. It was quite literally the peak of realism in video games at the time. This was vital not just on a technical level, but narrative as well as thematic.
The Hudson River, 2 years ago. We had classified intelligence that a new type of metal gear was scheduled for transport. The whole thing stank, but our noses have been out in the cold too long.
Think about the perspective of this introductory line, a recollection of the events from Snake himself. A third-person perspective. This is a very different change from the first-person point in which the entirety of one story was delivered. A detailed briefing of the mission and what occurred, like reading the logs of the previous games in the menus. Metal Gear Solid, no matter the ending you get, leaves the story of Snake with an open ending of self-discovery. This transfers quite elegantly to the beginning of 2, however, in a sort of cruel way. Snake and Otacon are here, living their lives by their own accord, however, repeating their actions of the past game, trapped, fighting against the creation of Metal Gear. Not exactly the cheery continuation the endings of 1 saw for the fellas here, but the one needed for the sequel. It's all just part of the game. Kojima's game. In the trailers, the fans see their most muscular manly man, Snake David, infiltrating a tanker, of all places, finding a new form of Metal Gear, of all things, just what they wanted. Refined next-gen gameplay, cutting-edge graphics, and a similar story. Why get too cookie crazy? After all, it is the formula, and it works. The game introduces you to the idea that less is certainly more. A smaller scale operation is in play, and Snake's companions this time consist of Otacon and Otacon Save. Otacon serves as an amalgamation of several characters from the first. He gives mission details like Campbell, weapon briefings like Natasha, warns of traps like Deep Throat, is horny like Meryl, and even when the player saves, he recites quotes from various philosophers, kind of like how Mei-Ling did.
Okay, there's a saying that goes, even a bird on high dies a glutton's death, as do the fish of the deeps. The lesson is, don't be greedy.
He tries. Metal Gear Solid provokes the idea of true freedom and purpose in life, finding a new beginning even after some of the darkest hours of one's life. Something perhaps we can all understand or have felt contemplative on at some point in life. The fact of the matter is, Snake is not free, and once the tanker portion ends, we're given a new fella to play as.
And by the way, Snake, we're changing your code name for all following communication.
What's wrong with Snake?
Just a precaution. You are now designated Raiden.
And players in 2002 and beyond are disappointed because instead of doing a roll, he does a cartwheel like some kind of little baby boy. The temperance of fan expectation is vital to the inner workings of Metal Gear Solid 2, And despite the false beginning, the tanker offers fans of the first everything they could have asked for. The metagame has already begun. The fans want to be Snake, doing the Snake things, such as rolling, and they get that. However, it shows the trappings of these characters as devices. Despite that ending of one, they're back, appearing as they did, doing the same things because this is how the nature of a sequel works. Why fix what isn't broken? Why dare to tell a different story through this universe, or even, dare I say, end it? Let these characters rest, and leave the rest to the minds of people who are maybe a bit too obsessed. To Captain Amando, this makes no money. And to Kojima, these characters haven't worn out their use quite yet.
We're done when I say we're done.
Upon the start of the big shell portion, players are spoon-fed everything they had already learned. The game treats the introduction of Raiden incredibly literally. He is a new person who needs to learn everything from scratch, despite his VR experience. You, the player, may have just done that tanker bit, but for the sake of build-up and fucking with you, you goddamn Neanderthal, also foreshadowing, we need to introduce everything again, down to the exact same wording as Metal Gear Solid 1.
The codex receiver directly stimulates the small bones of your ear. No one but you will be able to hear it.
All right.
The bright dot in the middle is you, Raiden. The red dots are your enemies, and the blue cone shape represents their field of vision. Your radar isn't affected by the weather, but if you're discovered by an enemy, you won't be able to use it. It gets jammed easily, I'm afraid. It's all made from currently existing technology.
The game is very front-loaded with many questions. Who is Raiden? Why is Snake dead, but also the terrorist leader, but also clearly this man? Why is Campbell back?
Behind D, Psycho Mantis.
Did you like my sunglasses?
Did you say nerd?
Questions.
Of course, these are the mere tip of a very large, pointy iceberg, and all have answers fully explained within the story. I like to assume that should you be watching this video, you're familiar with the mind-melding contortions of the narrative here, from at least a surface level, if anything. So I will not elaborate for fools.
No, this isn't happening. Jack, you have to answer me. Jack! Jack!
Apologies to 99.9% of my friends watching this video. I know you fuckers have not played this video game. The plot is actually quite simple and intentionally similar to the first game. However, the thematic and philosophical nature of it is vast, like the very ocean you're in the middle of. That I was trying to be deep, it didn't work. There is much to discuss, so I want to be able to go from topic to topic as smoothly as possible. Let's start with an element of the game I find to be the most misunderstood amongst most people who play this game, and a good springboard into every other theme and topic of the game. Mr. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance himself, Jack, aka Raiden. After some time of gameplay, just a little bit, maybe, 95% of the game, it's revealed that Raiden is a child soldier raised by Solidus and kidnapped by the shadow organization known as the Patriots. And a lot of people seem to view this as a reveal that Raiden is, in some sort of sense, a representation of the player. The main argument for this is Raiden's predominant VR experience being linked to the idea of playing video games, having a desensitization to violence itself, and having many names, similar to an arcade scoreboard, and of course, the game itself allows the players to enter any name that they wish. But these theories on what this twist means for the character of Raiden is simply boring as fuck. He is a character, Jack is his name, And just like Snake in the first, he is trapped within this mixture of realist and abstract narrative spread throughout the game. His life, his love, is a work of fiction, but this is exactly the point. Raiden is given very little in the form of character at the start of the game, holding no true ideals and simply following orders. He struggles to remember or acknowledge his past, however, and even his girlfriend seems to struggle talking to him, despite the very film-esque nature of their relationship as they discuss it. Throughout the game, though, he questions more and more. He isn't an extension of the player, he just starts off a little bit of a nobody, yet people confuse him getting an actual backstory, as well as a lot of character development, and learning to fight for his own ideals, as Snake did in the first game, as him not being his own character? Doesn't make sense, does it? To refer to Raiden as simply an extension of the player, end of discussion, takes away from the hybrid-esque writing effect here, as well as the first game. To chalk it up so plainly ignores the fact that the first game did the exact same thing for Snake. He just starts off a bit more developed because, Metal Gear 1 and 2 exist. Snake in 1 is just as much of an extension of the player as Raiden is in 2, meaning to say, he isn't. Sometimes the game is just addressing you as the player. It doesn't need to be so literal.
Snake laughter is the best medicine. You should be happy you've got enough free time to play a game. Enjoy yourself, okay?
Under scrutiny, you will see that Raiden and Snake's character arcs from both games line up quite a bit. This goes beyond the simple idea that the S-Free program is designed to make Raiden garner the experiences of Snake in combat, but also the fact that the real Snake shows up. It allows the messages and themes of living for oneself to be passed on. Snake in this game is a developed version of himself, and yet so much more. He's not just himself, but also a narrator and mentor. Snake hands Raiden the HF blade he is living, fighting for what he believes in, the exact same messaging that Grey Fox had given him before he died. He knows himself fully, and what he wishes to live for.
Fighting was the only thing I was good at. But at least I always fought for what I believed in. Snake, farewell.
Memes are humorous little images on the internet. Many themes are transferred quite well between 1 and 2. There is a sort of alteration to the theme of genetic destiny and confiding to it, and that is instead replaced with the theme of memes. Even briefly in a codec conversation from Metal Gear Solid 1 with Mei Ling, this is discussed. It is clear that the metaphorical cogs were already turning in Kojima's mind.
Don't forget to save your memories of me too.
Can't save memories even on that system of yours. Memories are fragile things. After you reduce them to binary numbers and send them through the air, they're not memories anymore.
I wouldn't be so sure of that. There's nothing my system can't do.
Memories aren't just sounds and pictures. They exist somewhere between the sounds, between the picture.
I don't get it. Anything can be done digitally.
If that's true, why don't you go ahead and try to say what I'm thinking right now?
I can't save that type of thing. You have to put it into words at least.
That's right. And that's what memories are. Wordless.
I don't know about that.
No matter how far data technology advances, you'll never be able to penetrate the human heart.
You're wrong. It's just a matter of time.
But first you have to try to understand human emotions, Mei Ling.
And how do I do that?
You have to allow yourself to fall in love with someone.
Raiden's existence is meaningful as he allows for this generational passage of information to be conveyed in a more visual way. Between games, Snake has found a cause to fight for. It may see him still fighting battles, but unlike the first 3 games, it is for himself and not for militant causes, but for the protection of future generations. In Metal Gear Solid 1, as Snake, he and the player learn the lessons the game teaches, and in 2, the same is done through the lens of Raiden, through a character they know and trust, Snake himself. The relationship does get off to a rocky start, of course, as Snake fundamentally disagrees with Raiden's being a giga grindset gamer and nanomachine prevalence.
The kid's wired with nanomachines.
This clashes with his more standard, gritty, dirty, man's man, face in the dirt, cocked gun in the soil, military man-faction type upbringing. While VR in the Metal Gear universe is highly above that of even modern-day technology, Raiden's desensitization to violence for it is appropriate.
Rose, no comment?
About?
I've killed someone.
Jack, it's a battlefield.
My opponents are living, breathing human beings. This isn't like the VR training. They have bodies. They have had lives. I took all that away from them.
But you've got no choice if you want to survive.
And yet, maybe because of the VR training, I can't help but try and block out that reality. It's the only way I can manage to fight.
Jack.
What?
I don't care what it takes, just as long as you come back alive. Do whatever it takes, please. Just come back in one piece.
Okay.
The same idea of a twisted enjoyment of violence was conveyed in one through the lens of a hardened, stoic soldier.
I just wanted an excuse to kill as many people as I could.
I've seen through evil.
Ooh, Snake. You're just like the boss. No, you're worse. Compared to you, I'm not so bad.
And 2 shows the transference of this to the youth of today through video games themselves. Raiden is a gamer god and says so himself, but even Snake in 1 went through a little bit of VR, with the player optionally being able to play through 10 stages without even setting foot on Shadow Moses. While not a gamer, he is gaming.
Excellent, Snake. Age hasn't slowed you down one bit.
Thanks to the VR training I did on board the Discovery.
The child soldier aspect is one I find Kojima was genuinely trying to communicate on. Raiden is an adult with few beliefs. He questions things, but only ever receives information.
Are you saying this was all a feint?
Raiden, get a hold of yourself. The entire mission is in your hands now. Do you understand?
But...
There's no time for questions. They could decide to retaliate for that failed assault.
You mean the hostages?
They could be in danger, yes. But we need to consider the possibility that they'll blow the whole shell.
Never does he come to his own actual conclusion on things until the end of the game. And this is only once everything has gotten a little goofy. But just remember, he is having a constant mental breakdown in that last 10% of the game, guys.
I hear it's amazing when the famous purple stuffed worm in Flapjaw space with the tuning fork does a raw blink on Harry Carey Rock. I need scissors. 61.
A child raised to do nothing but fight. This is assuredly how he would act, coming out with small fits of rage from time to time, and with even more reason for him to be desensitized to everything around him beyond VR.
I thought I was beginning to understand you, until I saw that room.
Would you have been happier if I had a picture of you hanging on the wall?
That's not what I was trying to say.
Enough, Rose. We'll talk about this later, after the mission.
Right. After the mission. I understand.
Rejecting reality itself, his life itself, coping and sieving his way through it all.
So you remember? I thought your memory had been manipulated by them.
It was, but I have nightmares every day. Pieces of the past I can't put together.
Why didn't you tell me?
You couldn't begin to understand.
This dissociation shows that while games can inherently hinder one's response to violence, Metal Gear Solid or any game can never truly convey the real terrors of war. They can encourage, filter, and idealize the ideas of it, but never fully capture it. I can't talk for anyone I know personally, but it's not too far-fetched to imagine shooters making certain breeds of humans want to become soldiers themselves. It may be an unintentional side effect of these games, but it shows how fantasy can seep its way to molding oneself in reality. Look at my Naked Snake cosplay here. It's not for fun, it's a cry for help. My masculinity crumbles more by the day. It was a bold attempt to try and look at these hidden elements of war and modern media mixing, but it feels as though it was overlooked or just plain ignored by many. It wouldn't be until the Phantom Paean when the child soldier element was handled yet again in a bit more of a physical sense this time. However, even then it was overlooked because everyone was obsessed with quiet, giant fucking mommy milkers. You horny bastards. It's a little ironic that these ideas in a game discussing passing information on and coming to your own conclusions and ideologies on life was the most ignored when it comes to these dark, dire dystopian themes, all because you play as a fucking twink. Hey fellas, I just want to thank you all for watching and surviving your way through this first part of this probably 3-part video series, give or take. We'll see how long it ends up being. I've got the new part-based system to try and help motivate me more to actually make these, as well as just, be better on my mental health, because making long videos is not easy, especially when you're dumb like me and want to make like a million fucking micro edits. Like, nah, it's not feasible. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next part.